Ms. Assaf, I think we can start. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome everyone to our webinar today on climate change education for social transformation, a whole institution approach to greening every school. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Dena Assaf. I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator for the UAE. I'm pleased that today's event is co-organized as part of our United Nations UAE 28 for 28 event series, as well as being the first of 6 webinars of the second season of the UNESCO-UNFCCC webinar series on climate change education for social transformation. Last year, UNESCO and UNFCCC held 8 conversations on the relevance of education to bring social transformation on the road to COP27, with a particular focus on greening education policy and curriculum. Building on this incredible journey together, UNESCO and UNFCCC are now launching a second series of webinars on the road to COP28, focusing on greening schools. Each episode will explore how to ensure that all learning institutions from early childhood through adult education are climate ready and integrate a whole institution approach to education for sustainable development to transform their teaching and learning, school facilities and operation, school governance, and community engagement. Before we start the actual webinar, please note that this session is run in English, French, and Spanish, and you can find the interpretation option on the bottom of your screen. And before going into further discussion with the first session, I'd like to invite our opening remarks from Ms. Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education in UNESCO, and Mr. Ovais Sarmad, Deputy Executive Secretary for UNFCCC, to give their welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this second season of the UNESCO-UNFCCC webinar series on climate change education for social transformation on the road to COP28. And let me begin by thanking Her Excellency Dr. Amna AlDahak Alshamsi of the Ministry of Education of the United Arab Emirates. Her leadership has been instrumental in putting education at the top of COP28 agenda. In November last year, the United Nations Secretary General warned that, quoting, "We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator." I think it's a very clear metaphor about how the situation is actually in the current times. And we must not act now. The Greening Education Partnership will support countries to do precisely this. Launched during the Transforming Education Summit convened in September last year and led by UNESCO, Japan, and the United Kingdom, this partnership has 4 pillars of action: greening schools, greening curricula, greening the capacity of teachers and education systems, and greening communities. These efforts are rooted in UNESCO's long-standing interdisciplinary work on education for sustainable development. More than 500 organizations and 50 countries have already joined the partnership, which is growing fast. It has already generated a strong community of practice. In the lead-up to COP27, UNESCO organized a first webinar series that brought together over 50,000 participants from some 184 countries. We delved into the knowledge, skills, values, and actions that are needed for post-carbon economies and a 1.5-degree lifestyle, so to say. We highlighted the importance of social-emotional learning, civic education, and traditional indigenous knowledge, and the roles of young people, of course, educators and women as agents of change. This second webinar series will build on this journey, focusing on greening schools. Ladies and gentlemen, schools should be places where you live and you learn, and learn what you live. Climate change and sustainability must be embedded across different subjects and approached through action-oriented and experiential learning. Campuses should be carbon neutral and climate resilient. Everyone in the school community should have a say in how decisions are made, with local communities and schools learning from each other on the path to create a greener society. Today we set the scene. We open a conversation on what it means to be a green school and how green learning spaces can inspire the reimagining of our education system as a whole. Let me thank Mr. Ovais Sarmad, Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, and his team for the long-standing teamwork between our two agencies. We are also honored to organize today's session in close partnership with UN Resident Coordinator in the United Arab Emirates, Ms. Dena Assaf, and her office. Let's continue to amplify this collaborative spirit and cooperation. By joining forces, colleagues, we can green every school and get every learner climate ready, really. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, and all participants in this very important event to which I have the great pleasure of addressing you. I'm the Deputy Executive Secretary at the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, and this topic on climate education is very close to my heart. And I strongly believe that this is something that we need to focus on and do everything we can to enhance the impact of education for addressing the existential threat that we are all facing. So with that in mind, I am very pleased to join the UNESCO in launching of the second series of the webinars on climate change education for social transformation. I would like to specially thank Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO, for our continued collaboration between UNESCO and UNFCCC and the efforts that have been dedicated to the operationalization of the Greening Education Partnership, of which UNFCCC is a proud member. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to the United Nations Resident Coordinator Office in United Arab Emirates, which will be hosting the next COP, Dena Assaf, who we have worked very closely with, for joining us in organizing this first webinar. Climate education is crucial to tackling the crisis and to secure a sustainable future for all. It enables transitions across all sectors and empowers individuals, especially students, the youth, to make informed decisions towards sustainability and resilience. The importance of education is recognized in the Climate Change Convention, the Paris Agreement, calling upon countries and all stakeholders to enhance climate change education to support the transition to low-carbon, climate-resilient economies and societies. This recognition has been turned into action through the adoption of 4 consecutive work programs on action for climate empowerment, ACE for short, agreed upon in the previous COPs, but also strengthened at COP26 in Glasgow. Climate change education, together with other elements of ACE, play a critical role in ensuring that everybody everywhere is equipped and empowered to drive climate action. As recently confirmed by IPCC, climate literacy and education can facilitate awareness, heighten risk perception, and influence more sustainable behaviors, including shifts to balanced, sustainable, healthy diets, reduced food waste, and active mobility. Greening schools can enable educational institutes to align their culture to address the reality of what students are experiencing outside the school. At the same time, it'll build the capacity of teachers to adapt their teaching methods to incorporate the complex and interlinked nature of climate change and create transformative learning environments. We are at a critical moment for climate action that is needed urgently. At COP28 in Dubai later this year, the global stocktake will assess where we currently stand in terms of achieving our collective goal to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and determine whether and how we need to correct our course, which would be needed. Now, more than ever, climate change education, public awareness, and ACE need to be central to countries' plans to deliver the transformational change we need to get us back on 1.5 degree trajectory and to adapt to the changes we are already experiencing. The transformational change we need requires climate literate individuals and communities across the board. We therefore hope our series of webinars this year will help deepen everyone's understanding about what green schools are and how you can promote green schooling in your own communities. Reimagining education systems that prepare us to move towards a more sustainable future for all is possible. Therefore, let us work together to make it a reality. I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of you for participating and, very importantly, to thank you in advance for taking necessary actions in this regard.
My apologies, I was on mute. I apologize for that. I'd like to thank Ms. Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education with UNESCO, and Mr. Ovais Sarmad, Deputy Executive Secretary, UNFCCC, for your welcoming remarks. Today's conversation, titled "What is a Green School?" will explore what it means to be a green school and embrace the whole institution approach of education for sustainable development, with a particular focus on climate change. We will reflect on how the green transformation of learning spaces inspires the overall reimagination of education systems as innovation hubs for change towards more sustainable futures. The discussion will be guided by two key questions. The first question, what does green education and a green school look like? And the second question, what are the challenges and opportunities in becoming a green school? So we'll start our discussion with the panel, and then we'll follow that with a Q&A. So before we start our panel discussion, I'd like to introduce you to a tool that we'll be using to engage everyone during the Zoom session, and even if you are also on YouTube. As you can see on the screen, we're using a tool called Slido, slido.com, and you can enter the event code of 20105 as shown on the screen. And you can also point your smartphone, if you have one, the camera on the QR code, which you see on the screen, and follow the link to the browser. The tool will have two purposes. The first would allow us to raise questions, to raise questions throughout the session, which will be addressed during the Q&A, and also to allow us to engage with you directly for input during the webinar. So please engage through Slido. We look forward to engaging with you in that way. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our three panelists who will share their views and experience. Our first panelist is Her Excellency Dr. Amna Alshamsi. Her Excellency Dr. Alshamsi is the Assistant Undersecretary for Care and Capacities Building Sector at the Ministry of Education here in the United Arab Emirates since July 2016. She is a member of a number of national bodies, including the UAE Council for Climate Action. Her efforts have been crucial to place education at the core of the COP agenda, including the co-design of the Education Pavilion at COP28, which will be the first in the history of a COP. Our second panelist is Mr. Pramod Kumar Sharma. Dr. Sharma is the Senior Director of Education for the Foundation for Environmental Education. co-coordinator of Pillar 1 on greening schools of the Greening Education Partnership. He leads the development of eco-schools, young reporters for environment, and learning about forests in 95 countries. And our third panelist, Ms. Kayleen. Kayleen is a 16-year-old student at Convent Butterworth High School in Malaysia. Her school is implementing the Eco Schools program, and she has been a part of the coordinating eco committee called the Green Squad for almost 2 years now. She volunteered to join the Green Squad because she was interested in developing her skills and to be part of the environment as a student. We welcome the three panelists. Thank you for joining us today. And so I would like to start with our first question on what we mean by greening education and how we understand the concept of a green school. And to reflect on this question together, I would like to invite everyone joining the session to please go to slido.com, entering the code as I shared 20105, and share your views on the question. You can also scan the QR code as we indicated earlier. As we can see here on the screen, some of you have already started engaging on using this tool. And you can see there's a series of questions on what does this mean? What is an urban school? What is the difference between an urban and rural school with regards to green schooling and so on? So we can see there's a lot of interest in this topic, and we're very happy to engage with you on that today. So I'm first going to turn to Dr. Alshamsi and ask her a question to start the conversation. Dr. Alshamsi, the UAE has announced that 50% of all the UAE schools and campuses will be transformed to be green accredited, with 35% of the schools to be registered by the end of the year. So in your view, what does greening education and a green school look like? And please share with us some examples from the UAE and plans to greening every school so that others can learn from the UAE's experience. Dr. Amna, over to you.
Thank you, Dena. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. The UAE is the proud next host of COP, where we're going to host COP28 starting next November for 13 days. During last week, we have announced the roadmap to greening education and the implementation of the Green Education Partnership framework across the educational system in the UAE. And part of that has been the target for greening the schools. Now, before we move to what we're trying to do and achieve through this plan, specifically on the green schools element, how can we define a green school and what kind of initiatives that we had previously that we can consider as well part of greening schools efforts across the educational system? The green schools can be identified from from the physical aspects of greening schools. That includes adopting practices related to sustainability across the different functions that happen through the school. That means the reduction of using printed materials, moving digital as much as possible to reduce the use of printed materials, recycling. It's also related to energy efficiency, the water saving methodologies that can be implemented across the different facilities in the schools, and can also refer to the creation of green spaces around the school. So there are a lot of physical aspects that are included within the definition of a green school, but there is also a lot that is within the education, the teaching and learning itself within the school. Students that are at the age of schooling at the moment, those are the people that are going to be leading the earth in the next decades. And these are the people that are going to be most affected by climate. Making sure that those citizens are the climate ready through embedding greening in its curricula, in its activities, whether it's extra activities within the school borders or outside the school borders, by engaging with the wider community around the school, is essential to create that mindset shift and behavioral change that we aspire to achieve with those citizens, to make sure that they are the driving force toward achieving all the climate actions that we always talk about. It's important, in addition to the political willpower that we see through convening in COP across the years, it's very important to also have that bottom-up approach where the younger citizens are going to lead those changes. And I like to think about the Green School as a lighthouse as well for its community, because it's not only the role of the school within the borders of the school, but its role within the wider community. This behavioral shift that we're trying to make, to change or embed with those younger citizens, are going to be to create that ripple effect across the wider society. Those children are going to take those practices and implement them at their homes and their wider communities and the different organizations and that are within their local community. And that will create the effect that we're aspiring for and the bigger impact that we want to achieve. Through the years, there has been several initiatives that have been implemented across different emirates within the UAE, like the Sustainable School Initiative that has been launched in Abu Dhabi in 2009. There has been also the Dubai Sustainable Schools Initiative. There has been also an initiative for the school programs with the Emirates Environmental Group. So all of these initiatives have put in place a very good foundation for the sustainable schools model and for greening schools in general. And as we approach COP28, the total number of schools that have been implementing those practices totals up to 15% of the total number of schools in the UAE. And the target is that by end of 2030, we're going to have another 35%, meaning that we're going to have 50% of our schools registered, ready to be climate ready and ready to join the green education and greening schools movement. And going forward, we hope that we're going to be continuing to register and certify schools to be eco schools according to the model that has been designed and implemented in so many countries by the FAE.
Well, this is wonderful to hear about these developments here in the UAE, and we look forward to hearing more during this webinar. The UAE is also hosting COP28, has that opportunity to also share more with the world on what you're doing. So congratulations on the work that you're leading. I'm now going to go further with our colleague Pramod, given the role of the Foundation for Environmental Education as the coordinator of Pillar 1 on Greening Schools for Greening Education Partnership, could you share your views on what does greening education and a green school look like?
Thank you, Dena. Thank you for this question. First, I would like to also congratulate Her Excellency for the leadership that is being shown by UAE and keeping education at the center of this transformation and creating this space for dialogue at COP28. As mentioned earlier and was introduced, I'm one of the coordinators of the Greening Education Partnership, looking at Pillar 1. The Greening Education Partnership is a global initiative that addresses two of the most pressing issues of our time: the planetary crisis associated with climate change and the need to transform education, and they go hand in hand. It aims to establish a powerful alliance to accelerate progress at global and country levels to get all learners climate ready, and at the same time also to harness the singular potential of education as a lever for climate change adaptation and also mitigation, as established by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and its scope series, the Paris Agreement and Action for the Climate Empowerment Agenda. The Green Education Partnership encourages member states and stakeholders to act for 4 areas: greening schools, greening curriculum, greening teacher training and education system capacities, and greening communities. A working group has been set up for each of the 4 pillars. So far, as per the data available, around 50 member states have confirmed their participation, and the number is increasing. And roughly 500 organizations have joined the partnership. Of these, about 300 organizations are involved in the Green School pillar and are continuing contributing in its development. The aim of the work under the Greening School pillar is to ensure that from early childhood through adult education, all schools achieve Green School accreditation, including teacher training and higher education institutions. Our vision is that all countries will have at least 50% of the schools, colleges, and universities becoming green schools by 2030. The concept of green education is embedded in the long-standing work of the international community in education for sustainable development, while focusing in particular the role of education in addressing climate change. Greening School is a whole school approach, and it aims to empower learners to become agents of change by equipping them with the knowing, skills, behaviors to build environmentally sustainable societies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pramod, for that intervention and helping to clarify what this all means. And I think our participants are hearing now from different points of view to understand what this can mean for them. And so now we're going to move to our third panelist. And I'd like to hear from Kayleen, if I pronounced your name correctly, Kayleen, who's a student and a young student. And why I say that is we want to hear from our youth that are actually receiving this support. So Kayleen, what does greening education and a green school look like? Please share with us some of your ideas and activities that you're doing in Malaysia in your eco school. And I'd like to hear from you what this has meant for you as a student. Thank you.
So my school, Convent Butterworth High School, is an all-girls secondary school located in Penang, Malaysia. We were recognized as an eco school in 2017. So in our school, we have formed what we call the Green Squad, which is basically a group of students who dedicate their time to learn and in turn teach their fellow students. So these members, the students, are the ones who will step up whenever there are presentations to be made during audits or when we have visits from our local university students, from other schools around Penang, and also from delegates from other countries. So the projects that we've had in our school were carried out mainly to encourage our students to recycle, to reduce their waste, as well as to reduce their energy consumption. We've also worked on our school gardens by improving our biodiversity and composting. So to help us implement all our projects, we've collaborated with experts such as from TNB, which is Malaysia's sole electricity provider, to give talks during our school assemblies. We've also had CAP, which is Penang's Consumers Association, and we've also had GRU, which is a non-governmental organization. So I think being a part of the Eco Schools program and our school's Green Squad has really not only introduced a whole new world to me, but it has definitely also helped to improve my communication skills and my leadership skills, along with my academics. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Kayleen. I can already tell you that you have excellent communication skills. So keep up that good work, and we look forward to hearing from you again during the webinar. I want to remind everyone that while we're having our discussion with the panel, you can enter any questions you have in the Slido tool, which we will then try to address as best as we can at the end of the webinar. So before I move on to the next set of questions, I wanted to just add here that we want to make sure that we have a green school and that we deliver the knowledge, the skills and values and attitudes to promote social, economic, cultural, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. In fact, when we talk about sustainable development, it is a combination of all of these things. So it's essential that schools embrace a whole of institution approach to education for sustainable development in their teaching and learning, facilities and operation, as well as school governance and community partnerships. What this means is, for example, that you embed climate change across several subjects, implement action-oriented and experiential learning, ensure that the school campus becomes climate friendly, include various stakeholders in the decision-making processes, and collaborate with communities. In these ways, school values and actions align so that learners live what they learn and learn what they are living. However, I want to add here that the recent UNESCO Global Survey report on youth, reports that youth demands for quality climate change education reveal that 70% of the 17,000 young people surveyed that the quality of climate change education they receive, and one out of 5 report that they do not feel prepared yet for climate change based on what they've learned in school. So there is lots of room for improvement. So that's why it's important that we need to transform our education systems to make sure that all learners receive quality climate change education and schools become more innovative towards more sustainable futures. Now, if we go back to the Slido, you'll see that we have a question here, what are the challenges and opportunities in becoming a green school? You can add your word or words to this word pictogram. And if you've noticed here, it seems that most of you have indicated that skills and training are of the highest priority, followed by awareness, emission, change, challenge. There's a challenge behavior or for resources, and of course, many other issues that we need to address. So I see that still skills and training seem to be the center of what many of you see as a challenge, but also an opportunity for all of us. So please continue to do that. We will be capturing your inputs for our reporting on this webinar. I see now that what has popped up is awareness as well as resources. So again, we can see the words changing based on what you're entering. Let me move on to further elaborate on our discussion with the panel. And Your Excellency, Dr. Alshamsi, I'd like to ask your viewpoint as a policymaker. What do you think are the barriers and opportunities to becoming a green school? Thank you.
Thank you, Dena. Now, when we talk about greening schools, sometimes the first thing that will come to educators' minds is that maybe this is just another layer of additional work that we have to keep up with. And we know that there is so much at their hands in preparing this future generations with all the knowledge, skills, and embedding the values that we require across the different subjects. However, with greening schools, there are so many challenges that can be turned into opportunities. And we always like to think of those challenges as new doors for innovating and creating more opportunities for transforming some of the practices that have been there in place in a way that will serve the education system and different education institutes. So if we think about some of those challenges and how we can turn them into opportunities, one of the challenges is the lack of awareness of how to build or how to change or transfer the model of the school to become a green school. And that along goes with the understanding the resources that is required, the different expertise that is required across the schools. And maybe part of it is the lack of those resources and those expertise in the schools. And that is very essential to implement the sustainable practices. Lack of the professional development for educators to always be informed and skilled to design or to deliver the education for sustainable development in a way that is going to make the students climate action ready. The resistance to change that usually comes with any big transformation or transformation that is highly demanded. There is always resistance to change in different sectors, and that as well, the resistance to change to move to a green school and implement the practices required. And even when it is implemented, there is always a necessity to make sure that this change is sustainable. There is a model that is put in place to maintain it, keep it up, and to make sure that this change is there to stay, and it's not just a momentary change. The initial cost that sometimes comes with implementing those practices, if we want to use resources to administer or to regulate the waste, the water consumption across the school, the energy efficiency and its usage across the school, there is some kind of initial cost that needs to come with it. But looking at all of this, we can immediately see that they can also be translated into opportunities, because if we take it from the last point, using all of these resources to implement the green school practices physically, it will in return provide schools with abundance of resources as well to be used for something else, because they will be using less energy, less water, and the green spaces will help as well in other areas, in like improving the social and emotional well-being of the students, because of the well-known effect of having green spaces and green and take the students themselves taking care of those green spaces within and gardens within the school. It will as well enhance the learning experiences for the students across the different age groups, from early childhood all the way to adult learning, if the green education practices have been implemented across curriculum and their engagement, the wider engagement with the community. The school, with its engagement with the community, is going to become the hub and the lighthouse that we've mentioned for creating the change across the community. So generally, changing the schools to green schools is going to provide an abundance of opportunities. These are just some things to mention that we've came across. And the Ministry of Education, across its master plan that we have put in place and we have proudly created along with our strategic partners, including UNESCO and UNICEF and other partners, is going to create a master plan to implement that on the UAE level. But the UAE looks at itself as an innovation lab, a huge innovation lab where we can design, implement, and pilot, and we can then put all these tools and resources that we are putting in place to implement the Green Education Partnership Framework, including the greening schools and the community engagement models that we're putting in place, to make it as an open resource for all educational systems with guidelines of how to adapt them depending on their own local, geographical, cultural needs, that will enable the wider scale of implementation and will be part of the legacy that the UAE education system is hoping to provide for the international education systems going forward as post COP28.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And in fact, I really appreciated some of the points that you stressed, because it goes even in educating our children beyond the school environment. These are the citizens of the future, the leaders of the future. They learn about the various things you talked about in the school. It becomes part of their character and becomes part of things that they can even bring into the workplace when they become when they get jobs in the future and become leaders in the future. So when you were speaking, this is what came to my mind. And I was thinking how that is so beneficial. I was also appreciating that you mentioned UNICEF, because as the United Nations, it's really important for us, the different parts of the UN, here in the UAE and across the world in supporting the work on greening schools. And I know that UNICEF as well as UNESCO are working with you on this. So thank you so much for also highlighting that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so just to go back to our student, who can then tell us from her perspective, what is your perspective, Kayleen, as a student on what you see as difficult in being a green school? And do you have any suggestions to involve other students like you? So how would you encourage other students who are listening today and others who will hear this when it's on YouTube? Why would they want to do this? So over to you.
Right. So in my opinion, I think that the biggest challenge was changing the long existing habits of our students.
Mm-hmm.
So in our school, when the students returned from lockdown, they were quite uncooperative and unused to the habits that the school was trying to encourage. So since we were introducing new norms to their daily school lives, such as not having rubbish bins in our classrooms or stopping the usage of plastic packaging in our canteen, it really took some time to see improvement in our students' habits. So to combat that, we started having a few talks once in a while during our assemblies, and we've also set up a few rules for our students. We've also had our prefects monitoring the students. So to further encourage them, we decided to think of ways, fun and creative ways to approach this issue. So to encourage other students who are currently watching, I'd say it really just opens your mind and to the world and environment around you, and it really just increases your awareness of your living space and your lifestyle as well. Yeah, thank you.
Would you say that it also changes your perspective as a student, that you can actually make a difference?
Yes, definitely. It really encourages you and gives you that confidence.
Yes, that's true. Because I think as a young person, sometimes you think, oh, this is for the adults to deal with, not me. And by doing what you're doing, you're showing and you're leading the example actually for adults to follow. But you can make a difference even in your school and in your community. So thank you very much, Kayleen, for the hard work you're doing, and keep up the good work. We look forward to seeing you in a leadership role in the future. And Pramod, to follow on to these questions as we're trying to clarify for our colleagues online, what do you see as the challenges and opportunities in becoming a green school?
Thank you, Dena, for this question. And we had this meeting of the partners for the Pillar 1. Out of 300 partners, 120 joined last month. And then we discussed, deliberated in terms of challenges, capacity gaps, potential for collaboration, while focusing on the 4 areas of the whole situation approach, which are basically teaching and learning areas, facilities and operation, school governance, and community partnership. So if you see at the 4 pillars, all the 3 pillars also contribute to Pillar 1. And then throughout this discussion, several key insights emerged. I'm listing some of those. One of those was in terms of acknowledgement that the need for global framework to guide green school initiatives, and also emphasizing the importance of considering local context during implementation. Adaptability of this global framework is of the essence. And it also involves understanding causes, impacts, solutions regarding climate change, and strengthening the focus on climate change adaptation, with disaster risk reduction playing a key role in this regard. The emphasis was also placed on engaging young people, supporting teachers in building their capacity to teach about climate change, and involving families and communities. we have, through experience, learned that it takes time. And the creation of a local network that support place-based and action-oriented climate learning is necessary, that can keep the motivation of the stakeholders involved. The participants of the working group also suggested establishing a well-funded and supported vertical and horizontal conversation around learning in regional and local contexts. So a community of best practice, and then reskilling or upskilling of teachers in greening concepts and collaboration with universities on pre-service teacher training on climate change were also considered important. Furthermore, in terms of providing opportunities for leaders to understand ESD and teacher needs is essential, so that they can have the right space, skills, and mandate to implement and realize the goals. The other important aspect, which is also there, is in form of climate justice, which should be, in my personal opinion, that should be at the core of our work by ensuring communities' involvement in decision making around student learning. There were suggestions of working with municipalities to demonstrate the academic and physical benefits of green schools, and also collaboration with community climate and sustainability networks to foster networking and action-oriented learning for youth. Identifying levers for system change that go beyond individual champion is crucial. We need to create or make school as a hub for a larger transformation of the communities. The discussion also highlighted the importance of sharing good practices. Action is already happening around the world, and how we can use and leverage those experiences in terms of carbon footprint tracking, greening schoolyards, even accreditation schemes, performance measurement tools. The role of research is also important, and connecting research with practice. So connecting universities as we learn and recognize the essential need to enhance the impact of greening education, first, and building the evidence base on the physical, mental, health, economic, environmental, academic benefits of green school and school years. We need to basically bring forth the quality education aspect of this initiative that can transform education systems around the world. And I see several opportunities for this collaboration. As we know, UNESCO will work on green school quality standards in consultation with green school working group members over the next year. The standard are aiming to provide progressive, context-relevant minimum quality standard for green schools. The consultations are also on the agenda, including one at COP28, and then also pilot phases with selected international schools to inform the development of the UNESCO Green School Quality Standards to be implemented as a whole solution approach to education for sustainable development. Green Education Partnership is conducting a baseline review of greening education, compiling the existing experiences, data, and evidence for each pillar. The goal is to create a brochure for presentation and discussion at COP28 and outlining the key data and evidence from working group members. This document will also serve as a reference for EGEP's future actions. And I understand it will be a living document, which will evolve with the experience that we get during the next 7 years. So we encourage everyone to join the Greening Education Partnership and participate in the Greening Schools working group. And the link to join the group can be found in the chat, and it was also shared earlier. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pramod. And it's great to see the combined effort of many coming together to put together guidance, best practices, knowledge sets to make it easy for everyone to move forward. Since we are coming towards the end of our webinar, we wanted to capture some of the key questions that you have already shared, and I want to thank, of course, the panelists for their discussion, but I need to come back to you for a question each, and if we could just keep it to a short answer to be able to reach the end of our webinar. And so I'm going to start, since I have Pramod on the screen, so I'll start with you. And the question I have here, is there an international agency to set up standards for green schools? I think you kind of addressed that.
Yes,
but maybe
UNESCO is working on that, and then they are mapping as part of baseline various schemes that already exist. And then the idea is to not basically rediscover the wheel, but pick up what good practices and experiences are, and then how we present them. And as I mentioned also, they need to be progressive because there are different capacities are there in different parts of the world. And we need to make sure that we have something which is implementable and with the diversity of education systems around the world.
And let me just ask you, since I still have you on the screen, you know, many of our societies around the world, or communities around the world, and the world is becoming more and more urban as we speak. So one of the questions is how do you make urban schools with limited green spaces into more sustainable and green schools? So do you have anything to answer for our urban colleagues?
I think Kelly answered that in her response. It is greening is, I think we should not take it metaphor from only the nature perspective or the school ground perspective. It is our lifestyle. So it has to do with our food choices, the waste issues, the energy, the different ways that we use water and then it could be school canteen. It could be. So there are many dimensions.
So that's more than just the land, and it's not just about trees. Yes. So I think that's a good answer. Thank you so much, Pramod. I'm going to move to Dr. Amna. Dr. Amna, we have a question for you. Could you share more about the roadmap to greening schools that you mentioned, and how your efforts to connect with the UAE's efforts to become more green?
So the roadmap that we have mentioned earlier is mainly designed based on the Green Education Partnership Framework. It touches all the four main pillars. So starting with the green schools, maybe we've mentioned the target numbers that we're looking at for the time being, but we are also looking at enabling the schools to be able to implement the eco-school model and for greening their schools. Thus, we are offering a clear roadmap for school leaders, where it's going to include the green schools training as part of their training journey throughout the preparation of the schools to implement all requirements of the Green Education Partnership. And moving to the greening capacities, we're working with the UNICEF for creating training and materials for the teachers, the educators, the principals that will implement what we are looking at in the greening curriculum and the greening learning area. So maybe I should talk about greening learning first. So in that perspective, we have an MOU that have been signed with IRENA since 2019. And we were in fact the first department or government entity in education across the world to sign an MOU with IRENA. And based on that, there were several areas of collaboration with them, among which there was the cross-curriculum framework that has been started, initiated, but then developed forward by specialized teams in the Ministry of Education that focus on three main strands: knowledge, values, and skills, and that touches four main domains, including sustainable innovation, climate action, the biosphere, and waste management, I think food waste and management. The four domains are the cross-curriculum framework have been designed for several age groups, starting from early education all the way to high schools. And we're looking at creating materials as well for the higher education institutes. Now, this framework have been designed or used in designing the material that we're looking at delivering to educators with the UNICEF and with Office of Climate Education as well. And the implementation or the training that we're looking to deliver to the school principals in terms of implementing the eco-schools is in collaboration with the FEE and Pramod team. And we're very proud of this collaboration as well. And then we move to the greening communities, which is the last pillar. In greening communities, as we have repeatedly said, the school is, and the other panelists have mentioned, is that the school is going to act as a catalyst among its community by creating that mindset shift, starting from the students within the school and creating that ripple effect all across the community. So we're looking at designing an abstract engagement model for the school, where the school or the university is going to be at the heart of that model, and to make sure that we engage from the community all the relevant parties. That includes government entities, whether in our case at the federal level or local level, the NGOs, the activists, the advocates, and the parents, and how to engage them to support the schools in becoming a green school across whether it's physical or non-physical requirements, and also how the school can contribute with all of those partners and stakeholders outside the school and deliver, becoming that agent of change for its community. And that abstract model is going to be implemented within our schools, piloted with our schools, amended and developed, and all of the resources that we've spoken about, whether it's the cross-curriculum framework, the curriculum activities, the extracurriculum activities, the community engagement model, the training resources. All of what we're working on are going to be piloted in the UAE, but then this is going to be the open source materials that we're looking at creating that large scale impact on different educational systems and bring the implementation of Green Education Partnership to speed with all the partners.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you so much for this additional information. I'm sure all the participants are going to be very interested to find this information that the UAE wants to share with the world on your experience. I think this is not only helping the UAE, but helping all schools around the world. So thank you so much for the UAE's efforts on this. And I personally am going to be very interested to follow what's happening. I'm sure we'll have a chance to meet here in the UAE. I'm going to give the last. Yes.
I forgot to mention one thing, which is
Sure.
a very big milestone for us, I think, and for the whole educators, for all educators, is the presence of the education pavilion in COP28 for the first time in COP history. And that puts the education at the very forefront of the COP28 agenda as well.
So something for us also to visit. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
The last question I will give to Kayleen before I conclude the webinar. Kayleen, we want to hear from you your final thoughts on what do you see as the first step for greening a school, and where do you think a school should start? So if another student or someone were to talk to you, what would you tell them where to start? Kayleen.
I think the first step would probably be the teachers and their education towards the students in classrooms. I think it's, to start very simply, just educate the students. The students can educate themselves as well on, the current issues, the current crisis, and as well as really go in depth about the effects that our daily actions could be bringing to the environment. Yeah.
That's very good advice. Thank you so much, Kayleen. And again, we encourage you to continue in your good work. Colleagues, I do want to thank the panel and thank all of you for the questions that you've provided. Of course, as we know, with all of these subjects, we could go on and have many more discussions. And we do hope that you found this webinar to be very helpful. So a thank you again to Her Excellency Dr. Amna, Pramod, and Kayleen for your inputs, and to all the participants for listening. I do want to, as an overall conclusion, to indicate that this is the first session of a series of conversations. And we look forward to UNESCO's work. As you can see here, they have their schedule. The webinar series will have 5 more webinars. The dates and times you can see here on the slide. The series will cover various dimensions of climate change education, ranging from the topic of discussing ways to collaborate with communities on how to green to learning content. And today's discussion will also be published as a discussion paper, as well as the video recordings, which will be made available on UNFCCC's ACE Hub and UNESCO's webinar page, as well as for us in the UN and the UAE, we have our own YouTube channel where we will also be placing this webinar. The next webinar for UNESCO will be on the 20th of June at 10 a.m. CST, and we'll reflect on how to transform learning environments to ensure that facilities and operations embody sustainability principles in response to climate change. The conversation will also explore how school governance and culture become inclusive and participatory. The Zoom link will be used for all the series, so if you have the Zoom link, you can use that, and detailed announcements will be shared on the event on the UNFCCC's ACE Hub and UNESCO's LinkedIn websites and links for their event series. This series is also delivered as part of the Action for Climate Empowerment Hub, supported by the German regional government of North Rhine-Westphalia. As I indicated at the beginning of our webinar, this webinar is also part of the overall webinar series here in the UAE supporting COP28. You can follow the United Nations and the UAE social media channels to get more information on our upcoming UN UAE 28 for 28 web series, which this is part of. Like today, we held these on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. UAE time. And our next session will be covering financing of climate action. The QR code on the screen will take you to the recordings for our previous webinars. And we hope that these different webinars and the tools that we now have with Zoom allow us as the United Nations to reach all of you with this knowledge and information, that you find this very helpful and useful to your work. So please follow us. You can see previous webinars on our different websites and YouTube channels. And thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you so much.